Hello and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. My name is Alia and I'm one of the team members here at Learn, Do, Become. I'm also April and Eric's daughter, and I am so excited to do this podcast today because at Learn, Do, Become, we help people who are drowning in the details of life to create simple systems so they can do what matters most. And that is exactly applicable in my life and my circumstances right now, because we're going to be talking all about what happens when life throws a curveball at you, throws something totally unexpected in your path, and how a simple system and a step command central can make it so much easier and just a much more peaceful and calm experience to handle that challenge that life threw your way. And if you'd like to read the show notes or read the things that I'm talking about today, you can go to learndobecome.com/episode 283 for any related links, anything that's written, just kind of the bullet points. So you can either listen or read. It's kind of a fun option to have both. So I want to set the scene and kind of share the timeline for what happened in my life recently. We had my husband's spring break for medical school coming up, and we decided that we wanted to go back and visit family. We live about an 18-hour drive away from them, or a couple connecting flights to get back to our family. So we haven't made the trip back yet. And we thought, we've been here almost a year while he's been at med school, so it's time to go back and see family and really catch up and have a good time together. So we were able to plan 2 weeks where we're able to go see everyone, plan some fun things. And then the plan was just to come back after those 2 weeks of traveling and seeing family. And then he could resume his schooling, I would resume work stuff and being home with our son during the day, and it was all just going to work out perfectly. But what happened was we got home from our 2 weeks of traveling, and then the very next morning, so maybe only 10 or 12 hours later after we got home, I ended up in the hospital for a couple unexpected but necessary surgeries, and then it ended up being a week in the hospital, first figuring out what was going on, then having the surgeries, then having some recovery time, and now I'm here at home, resting, doing well, and in a 2-week recovery window where I can't really do a whole lot. So what ended up being we thought would be a 2-week spring break and then jumping right back into normal life is now 5 weeks of very just different than we planned, and things that aren't going quite according to anything that we had in mind. And of course, nobody expects emergency surgeries or a week-long hospitalization. So just kind of rolling with all of that. And at first my mom said, I don't want you to feel like you need to be doing a podcast. I don't want you to feel pressured into doing that. And I told her, well, I can't really do much besides, rest and recover and just kind of sit here. So it's actually kind of fun for me to outline a little podcast and then sit here and record it, because that's pretty much all I can do right now. And I hope that as you listen to this podcast, you can think about something that may be ongoing in your life, or something that you just overcame and went through, or even preparing for something in the future that might occur. And obviously things occur in our lives all the time, and there's really no predicting what might happen, good or bad. But I think that when we can really understand that having a simple system to support us through the good, the bad, the hard, and the easy times in life, I think being able to see that in all circumstances of life really gives us a better perspective on the importance of having a very simple but effective step command central, or a very simple step system to back us up in all these different seasons of life. And I want to share 6 different things. I think it's actually 7, maybe 6.5. One's a little tiny bullet point. But I want to share 6 things that made a world of a difference in me going through this experience and not feeling completely frustrated, and didn't leave me feeling like I wanted to shut down and quit and drop everything. It left me feeling empowered, knowing I get to prioritize my rest and I get to do the things that matter most to me right now, which include recovery and making sure that I'm taking care of myself and my family to the best of my abilities. But I'm not going to stress myself out and add a lot of extra things to my plate right now just because I feel like I need to, or I feel like I need to just be on this treadmill that never stops. So the first thing is that my husband and I had a current project before the spring break trip to plan out all the details of our spring break. Now that included getting, the tickets for the trip a couple months ago. That included all the different things we wanted to do while we were there and coordinating and calendaring with our family and really making the most of this spring break trip because it was a big investment of time and energy and money to make it happen. And we wanted to make sure it was a great experience for everyone involved. And inside of that current project, I store my current projects digitally, so it's really easy for me to add some more next actions and add little notes for myself. But inside that current project, I was able to write a list of things that needed to happen or that I wanted to do once the trip was over. So the whole project was pretty much finished by the time we ended up getting home, but there were just 3 or 4 next actions still inside that project that were waiting for me for when we got home. Things like coordinating with the person who was watching our cars and getting our mail for us, things that we needed to place a grocery order to prepare for a couple of things that were coming up in the next week when we got home. So we had a little list of just 3 to 4 next actions that needed to happen, very simple texts or errands that needed to be run so that everything could resume as normal. And then once I realized that we were not able to just get back home and that I was going to be in the hospital for a while, I was able to pull up that list of things to do after the trip and figure out what could be delegated to somebody else and what could be deferred to the next week once I was home, or even things that maybe it didn't even need to happen anymore. And it was so comforting to me to know that I had this list created that not only allowed us to have all these simple next actions lined up to plan the trip and make it happen, but also things to make our jump back into real life after a trip even more smooth. So as you're planning trips or planning maybe a conference that you're going to, something that you'll be out of town for, or anything that might interrupt the regular flow of your life, I would encourage you to add a little list of things to do when I get back home, or things to do after vacation, things to do after the busy holiday season. That's something that my mom taught me, is she has a after Christmas list, for example. So when she's in the middle of the Christmas holiday with our family, she's not stressed about all the things that she wants to or needs to do afterwards. Instead, she makes a little list that can then be safely set to the side and then checked back in on after Christmas is over. So I just loved knowing that all of those items that needed to be done after our trip were safe, and then I could delegate or defer those or delay them as appropriate. And so if that's something that kind of stresses you out during your trip, if you're thinking, well, it's going to be so hard to get back into life when we get home because I have XYZ that I need to do, I would encourage you to think about how you would feel if you had this kind of list that was holding all of those items safely until you were home from a vacation or a conference, something out of town, or something, or a little list of things that you wish you could do after you're going through a little rough patch in life. And so I actually have been adding to this list during the week in the hospital because a few things popped up in my mind of things that I wanted to do around the house or that I needed to do just in life in general. But obviously I couldn't do them right then. I was in the hospital. So they were added to that little list of tasks and everything was just out of my brain. Didn't have to think about it. I knew it was safe for when I got home and I could actually do things. The next thing is that my husband and I have some really good home systems and routines in place to keep things tidy on a daily and weekly basis. Before we left for the trip, we made it a priority. We put it on our calendar to do some cleaning around the house, nothing major, but just making sure that our apartment was looking really nice and was ready to welcome us when we got home from our 2 weeks of travel. We made sure all the dishes were done. We did all the laundry that we could. We tidied everything up so that nothing was majorly out of place. Of course, it wasn't 100% perfect or spotless, and it's not like we did the white glove test to make it perfectly dust-free or anything like that. But we made it a welcoming space so that once we left for our trip, we knew that we were coming home to a clean apartment and that we could start fresh, that we weren't coming home to a big mess, that we weren't coming home to something that would leave us frustrated or discouraged. And that was so helpful because when I did have to go to the hospital right away, We were able to have guests in our home, people staying here with our son, people coming over to watch him, and I wasn't feeling embarrassed or stressed about the state of our apartment. And obviously our friends wouldn't have cared if our apartment was a little bit messy or if things were everywhere. But I think it helped me feel a lot of peace knowing that there wasn't extra cleanup that I had to do on top of anything that was brand new in life popping up. So we came home to a nice, clean apartment. And we also have a good routine in place where we have our groceries, a general grocery run every Saturday or every weekend together. And then we do our laundry together and try to be really efficient about putting that away so it doesn't build up. So if you haven't yet created systems in your home for a basic laundry schedule, basic grocery shopping and fridge clean out, and even a daily reset, we call it resetting the room. We like to reset the apartment at the end of the day. If you haven't done that yet, that might be a great next in line project to add to your list. And maybe you can make that a current project while many people are doing their spring cleaning right now. But being able to establish a routine that gives your house or your apartment, any living situation, a reset, and then being consistent about that is going to be so relieving and so wonderful to know that you don't have to do a major, massive cleanup all the time, that it's just small, consistent efforts to keep things tidy, keep things looking nice. And I think if you're in a situation right now where the clutter is constantly bothering you, or there's certain landing spots in your house that just keep getting collected with so many random things, and it feels like the piles are just never going away, as you focus on each of those small areas as a little project in and of itself, I promise that it will make it so much easier because you're focusing on creating one small system at a time and being really patient with yourself and your efforts. So those are the two things that we did pre-spring break trip to really make our life easier, having those routines in place for our home, and then also making a current project out of our spring break trip. And then once we got home and I was in the hospital, one of the things that I really appreciated so much was that my husband does a daily review every day. We talk more about the daily review in our STEP program. STEP stands for Steps to Everyday Productivity and is our signature program here at Learn, Do, Become. But essentially, we encourage everyone to do a daily review and look at their calendar each day, look at the next actions list that they have created so they know what simple tasks they could incorporate into their daily schedule, and then looking at any routines that need to happen during that day or anything that is date specific that needs to be added to their calendar, and really creating a plan for their day so they can not only accomplish everything on their calendar, but also incorporate a few additional flexible tasks that they would like to get done. And I really appreciate my husband doing this because he's a medical student right now, and his school did not stop for that whole week that I was in the hospital, and he was so kind to stay with me that whole week because he was able to do some virtual things for his classes and whatnot. But every day he would look at his calendar, he would figure out what he needed to do appointment-wise with his classes, and then he made arrangements to do those virtually, or he was able to reschedule some for the following week when he could do a makeup. And then he would also incorporate a routine of making sure that our son was being watched by somebody. We have a really supportive church community and friend group here that's going to med school as well. So we have lots of families that we've grown to love, and our son has a lot of friends that are his same age, lots of kids here. So we felt so supported and encouraged by our church community, our school friend community, and there was no shortage, thankfully, of people who were willing to come stay the night at our apartment and make sure that everything was going okay so my husband could run back in the evening and, kind of sort out the details for the next day, or he would be texting different people from church and figure out who would like to be with our son during the day and take him to their house. So it was definitely a busy week for our son, lots of new places and faces, but of course he was in good hands. But it was hard as parents to not know what my own schedule was going to look like in the hospital, and then not know how long we were all going to be apart. But I really appreciated my husband taking on that routine of making sure that our son's care was coordinated during the day and the night, because that was just a detail that I really couldn't do myself. I was not feeling 100% and definitely not in the right headspace to be coordinating lots of details. So I'm really grateful that my husband did do that daily review, where not only was he reviewing his calendar and making sure that he was going to be following through on his school obligations and anything else he'd signed up for, but then he also was able to complete that routine of our son's care, and then he was able to complete any calendar-specific tasks that were on his calendar. And that way we didn't miss anything important, like paying any bills or checking in on anything important. Everything that needed to be handled each day was handled. And then if there was anything that could wait, then we were able to defer that to the next week when we had a little bit more flexibility and free time. The next thing is that I personally have a really good routine when it comes to emails and texts that I handle that are incoming each day. I typically try to check my email maybe 3 to 5 times each day, and I only have a handful of emails in my inbox at any given time. I really try to either delete as much as I can, unsubscribe from as much as I can. I only keep emails in my inbox for a couple of days max while they are, in action in my life, while I'm taking action on them and figuring out what to do. And then anything that is either a support material to a project or something else I'm working on gets safely filed away and put in a safe email folder so that my inbox is not full. And then I also have a texting routine where I try to check my text twice a day and respond to all the texts that I receive either in the middle of the day or at the evening before I go to bed. So that way I'm not spending all day on my phone checking texts and emails, but I have a couple consistent times when I do check them, and then I respond to as much as I can so that I can, especially if they're 2 minutes or less texts, I'll try to just handle those right away. And whenever things come in, I check and see if they're urgent. And if they're not urgent, they can wait until those 2 designated times when I answer my text. And I had a lot of messages incoming from really kind family members and friends who were checking in, people who wanted to help bring meals or take care of our son. So I had a lot of messages incoming, and I was so grateful for all the support. And I was able to reach out to each of those people and in a timely manner that worked for me and how I was feeling. And that was just so nice to know that I didn't have this huge buildup of messages while I was sitting in the hospital. And whenever somebody would text and say, hey, I would love to help with your son, here's some days that I'm free, I was able to share those right away with my husband. He would put them in his little note where he was creating a schedule for our son. And then when he did his daily routine of checking in with people who were going to be with our son, he was able to look at the list of names and dates that I gave him and figure out who was available. So that was a great way for us to do that teamwork together, because most people reached out to me directly, and then I was able to pass on that information to him, and it made it so much easier and simpler to do those different quote-unquote jobs that we had assigned ourselves. And that was also helpful to do this email and text check-in each day, because we did have some important emails come in, especially one of them was about renewing our lease for our apartment because we've been here almost a year. And I was able to review all the stuff in the email and realize that I had a little bit of time before I needed to respond. And then I was able to put those in a little waiting folder for when I got home from the hospital. And then once I was home and my husband and I had a chance to catch our breaths a little bit, sit down and talk, then I was able to address all of those emails that were waiting for me. And I loved knowing that they were all safe and secure, and that I was reviewing all the different information that was incoming, but I didn't have to act on any of it right away. And so I want you to think about how that could feel in your life if you're someone who has a lot of texts or emails building up. What's something that you could do to create, it could be a current project or a next in line project, to create a routine for your incoming emails and texts? How would it feel to have the texts from the day answered, or the emails from the day sorted into where they belong, knowing exactly which emails do need your attention at a later time, knowing which emails need your attention urgently so that things don't, we call it like explode, so that none of the tasks or projects in your life explode? How would that feel to have something like that in your life, where you just know that all the information that's incoming is safe and not getting lost? And I want to encourage you that it's totally possible to create these kind of systems, because when we talk about creating a project like this, we're not asking you to go and sort through all of your last 5 to 10 years of emails and get a whole system set up for that. All we're suggesting is to create a new routine that you can actionably stick with for all the incoming stuff. And then you're going to make a separate project, or many projects if you have a lot of stuff, to handle that backlog of emails and texts and all those things from the past. So I think I want to make that clear, that differentiation between having a routine to handle all the incoming stuff. So it's almost like I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to give myself a great start right now. And then I know that I can tackle all the backlog eventually as a future project. But right now I need to prioritize all the incoming things. All right, the next thing I wanted to share, I think this is point number 5, is that when I got home from the hospital, they gave me a lot of papers, a big packet with care instructions and details about my surgeries and all that stuff. And they gave me just so much information all at once. And I was thinking to myself, what would happen if I had a lot of piles of paper at home and I got home from a stressful week in the hospital and I'm not feeling good and I have a lot of things that I feel like I need to catch up on? What would happen if I just put that paper on my counter with a bunch of other papers and then it was gone and I didn't do any of the next actions or the follow-up appointments? How would that feel? And that made me feel a lot of stress, honestly, when I thought, I know that a lot of people are going through that right now, where they have a lot of papers or a lot of the buildup of different piles of things around their home. And when they get home from a situation like that, the last thing they want to think about is, how am I going to process this big packet of papers? How am I going to figure out where these items go in my command central? So as I was thinking about that, it made me so grateful to know that I have an inbox where I can put things that are not time sensitive, and that I have different ways that I do my own personal daily check-ins to handle any incoming papers and items that are really urgent. So what I did when I got home on Friday, and I thought, well, no one's really going to be open, obviously, on the weekend to call them and make appointments for follow-ups and all sorts of stuff. So I put the papers in my inbox just as a safe spot for them. And then I put on my calendar for Monday during our son's quiet time to spend about 30 or 40 minutes making some phone calls and sorting through all the details. So I put everything in my inbox and I put that on my calendar to say, this is when you're going to go get those papers and process them, because they are kind of time sensitive, but it's the weekend, so there's not much you can do right now. I was able to enjoy the whole weekend, focus on my recovery, enjoy it as much as I could, And then on Monday, I sat down on the couch and I probably talked to different people on the phone for 45 minutes or so, but I went page by page through the packet that they gave me, and I was able to pull out all of the next actions that I had. There were about 5 different follow-up appointments or different lab tests or a check-in they wanted to do a month from now, all sorts of things inside that packet. And I was able to call and get all of those scheduled, put them on my calendar, and then put the appropriate contact information and addresses and all that stuff inside those calendar events, so I didn't have to save that whole packet of papers. And then I was able to skim through the rest of the materials, make sure I got everything. There was one new routine I had to add to my calendar that I wouldn't forget about. And then I was set. I didn't have to worry about those papers anymore. And all of those appointments were scheduled. They're on my calendar. And I don't really have to think about any of that for the next month. And unless I get more follow-up appointments, which hopefully we should be good to go, I was able to just archive that packet, and then I'll probably throw it away once I have all these appointments done. But it felt so good to know that that paper packet was not lost in the shuffle anywhere. It was put safely into my inbox. I was able to process it and take out the tasks and the different next actions and appointments that were required of me. And then now it's all on my calendar, out of my head. So if you've ever thought I can't get one more piece of paper in the mail, I can't get one more set of papers that has tasks assigned to it, or I can't handle more incoming things telling me I need to make appointments or I need to make phone calls. If you've ever felt that way or felt really overwhelmed by the thought of that new information coming into your life, and just know that you're not alone in this. This is something that we hear from so many of our steppers, and it's something that I know that my mom went through a lot when she was first setting up her own organizational system and she didn't quite have everything in place yet. That was something really overwhelming to her. And I'm really grateful that I've grown up in a home where we had this system in place from the very beginning, that this is something that is more like second nature to me. But I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, and it's never too late to learn these new skills about how to process the incoming items into your life. And I promise that it can become second nature for you in your own life as you practice and as you keep working at it. And I think that just honestly, the practice is the key, because it didn't happen overnight for me. Papers initially gave me a lot of stress, and I sometimes would just let them stack up on my desk when I was in high school. And then my mom said, hey, let's sit down and let me show you how I process my papers. And once I saw that, it was life-changing for me. And it's something that's stuck with me ever since, all the way here into adulthood. All right, the sixth point, this is second to last, we're almost done, is that once we got home and I was kind of settled and had my little corner on the couch where I was just going to rest and recover, my husband and I looked at our calendar and we saw that our monthly budget check-in was happening that weekend on our calendar. We do a budget check-in once a month just to make sure that everything's looking good with what we're spending, the different categories that we've outlined for ourselves, and we try to focus on moving toward our different financial goals just step by step as we do our monthly check-in and figuring out where we can improve and what we want to do together. And I was able to just sit next to him on the couch, and he had his computer open, and we just talked through the different parts of our budget, talked through the different plans and the different things that we were thinking about. And it was so nice to have that consistent check-in where even though I wasn't feeling 100%, I was still able to sit down with him and have that routine check-in. Obviously, if I had been feeling absolutely terrible and I was not in the right headspace to do it, we could have pushed it to the next week and it would have been okay. But it was really comforting to me to know that we were working together as a team and that we have this routine on our calendar where we really block out time and we stick to that time. We don't let things come in our way because we know that being able to talk about our budget and talk about our financial plans and what's going on, even for 25 or 30 minutes, that really sets us up for the whole month and helps us to be confident in the direction that we're moving and not feel really stressed. And so we were able to just do our regular check-in, but also pay our rent a little bit early so that I wouldn't have to think about it. That's one of the tasks that I personally do is I log in and pay it. We don't really have anything on auto pay just because we like to make sure we can see exactly what's charging and when. So that's just our preference. But it was nice to get a few of those things out of the way early so that I wouldn't have to focus on any of them this week, that I could just be focused on my recovery and that I would know that all of our bills are paid, that everything's set, and that we're good to go until our check-in here at the end of April. And then finally, I looked at my current projects list and some of the things that were incoming from work. And obviously I was able to delegate a lot of things to our wonderful team while I was in the hospital. So that was nice to not have to think about a lot of extra details like that. But when I got home, I looked at my current projects list and I really removed everything from my plate except for 2 projects. Well, I have one work project that is pretty easy to do in the background. So while I am sitting on the couch recovering, I have a couple things that I can do for this work project that will move it forward. And it's something fun that we're going to be announcing soon. So I'm excited about it. And it's nothing urgent, but it's just something that keeps me happy and keeps my mind occupied. And then I was also able to add my own personal project, which is rest and recovery. So I have 2 current projects right now, and one of them is rest and recovery. And it's easy for me to want to load up my projects list and say, well, I can be productive. I can do a lot right now. I'm sure I could fit an extra couple tasks into my life here or there. But realistically, that's not healthy, and that's not going to help me recover the best that I can. So I've really simplified, and I'm just telling myself that this is okay. This is the season of life and the time right now where I need to be really patient with myself, and I need to take a lot off my plate. And I know that for some people, they might not be able to take everything off their plate or close to everything as I've done here. But I think being able to really check in with yourself and ask, are all of these projects 100% essential right now during this curveball that life has thrown at me? Are any of these projects able to be delegated to somebody else? Or am I able to simplify my role in a project specifically for work projects and stuff like that? And is there anything that can wait until next month or even the month after when I'm feeling better? So I think it's important to really check in with ourselves and be honest about how much time and energy we actually have to do these projects so that we don't overwhelm ourselves during these times when we may need more rest and more downtime, or when we just need more mental free space to handle all that's going on around us. So I hope those things were helpful today. I honestly, this was not how I expected the last week to go, but I'm really grateful for the systems that we have in place as a family. I'm grateful that my husband and I can be connected on this importance of having a step command central in our lives. And obviously we both do our step systems a little bit differently, and that's okay. We've adapted it to meet our personal needs. But the most important thing is that we can depend on our systems to give us the information that we need when we need it. We're not feeling overwhelmed and overloaded by thousands of tasks on our to-do list, and we're not feeling like we're just never-ending trudging through projects and routines and trying to make it out. So I want to share this encouragement with you, no matter what you're going through, or if there's something upcoming in your life that you may go through soon. I hope you know that we're here at Learn to Become. We're cheering you on and we're encouraging you through the ups and the downs in life, and that we're certainly going through a lot of those same things ourselves. And we don't always share about them here on the podcast or in our Facebook pages or anything like that, because obviously some things are more private or we don't feel the need to share everything. But we really hope that you know that we're all human too, and that there is a lot of complexity to all of our lives, no matter where we're at and what we are going through. But at the core, we have our step systems in place that can really hold the bulk of the information and the bulk of the things that might typically cause us a lot of stress or worry or frustration. And this has been the key thing that's helped me to really relax and not feel stressed during this really unpredictable time. And again, if you would like to read through these bullet points or share this podcast with a friend, you can find that at learndobecome.com/episode 283, and everything will be right there for you. So thanks so much for joining me today. And if there's anything that you'd like to share about things that help you when life throws you a curveball, whether it's a little routine that you have or different practices that you have in your life for recovery or anything like that, we would love to hear from you. It's always fun to hear different ideas and perspectives and best tips and tricks from our community. So we have a comment section here on the show notes page, and we'd love to hear from you and from all your wisdom. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon here at Learn to Become Radio.